In our last couple of lessons, we have been focusing on the tribes that were found in different parts of the Indian subcontinent. But in those lessons, we got to know about the geographical locations of those tribes. We also got to know briefly about the administrative systems of those tribes. But to understand any event in history, it is imperative on our part to find out more about the lives of the people who used to live then. So this is the focus of our discussion. That is, in this lesson we will be finding out about the lives of these nomads and these tribal people. So the question we will try to answer here is, how were the lives of the nomads and the mobile people? Now these nomads were people who used to move from one place to another. These people did not have any permanent settlement. These people did not have any permanent way of growing food for themselves. So how did they manage to earn a livelihood for themselves? How did they manage to grow food? How did they manage to form societies? These are some of the questions that we will now try to find answers to. So let us begin this discussion. Of the various types of nomads, here we will be discussing about the pastoral nomads. Who were the pastoral nomads? These were people who used to move from one place to another with their animals. But why were they known as pastoral nomads? Because these were people who depended on their animals for the dairy products that these animals supplied. These animals used to provide dairy products in the likes of milk, butter. And because these people used to depend upon these animals, these people were known as the pastoral nomads. So let us now find out few more details about the lives of these pastoral nomads. So we have learned that these pastoral nomads relied upon their animals. These animals provided them different kinds of products which they required for their sustenance. Now these pastoral nomads supplied products like wool and ghee in exchange for grains, cloths, utensils and other products that were provided by the settled agriculturists. Now the settled agriculturists were people who pursued and practiced agriculture at particular regions, which is why they were able to grow grains. They were also able to produce cloths for themselves. And while they produced grains and proper kinds of food, they also required utensils in which they could have those foods. So these were some of the items that were either produced or made by the settled agriculturists. So from this we can infer that the pastoral nomads exchanged the goods like wool, ghee for grains, cloths and utensils that were made by the settled agriculturists. Now the very thought of moving from one place to another brings to our mind a very important question. How did these nomads move from one place to another? This was not a time when they had aeroplanes, buses, trains, cars like we do. For this purpose, these nomads relied upon their animals. So these animals were required to transport the goods. While these animals like camels and horses were used by the nomads to transport the goods to different regions, these nomads, after reaching those regions, they used to sell their goods. And in this way, they used to get different kinds of goods that were produced by the settled agriculturists in return. So we can understand how crucial role animals played in the lives of the pastoral nomads. Firstly, they provided them with wool, butter, ghee and milk, and on the other hand, these animals were also used to transport these goods. These animals were also used for the purpose of traveling from one region to another. Now when we talk about the nomads, mention must definitely be made of the Banjaras. The Banjaras constituted a very important nomadic community. Now what did these Banjaras move in? As in, what kind of transport did these Banjaras use to move from one place to another? The Banjaras used to travel in a caravan that was known as the Tanda. So the Tanda was the specific caravan that was used by the Banjaras for the purpose of traveling. You will be surprised to know that Sultan Alauddin Khalji of the Khalji dynasty under Delhi Sultanate relied upon the Banjaras to transport grain to the city markets. So you can understand that these Banjaras were not just nomadic people who lived on the fringes of the society. They were important as well. Because if they had not been important, a sultan like Alauddin Khalji would not have relied upon them for the purpose of transporting grains to the city markets. While talking about the Banjaras, we got to know about quite a few details about their lives. Firstly, they used to travel in caravans that were known as tanda. And secondly, Sultan Alauddin Khalji used to rely upon them for the purpose of transporting grains. But how do we get to know so much about the Banjaras? Mentions of the Banjaras could be found in Jahangir's memoirs. Now, what do we get to know from Jahangir's memoirs? From Jahangir's memoirs, we get to know that these Banjaras used to carry grains on their bullocks, and these were carried from different areas and then were sold in towns. So we can understand how important these bullocks were when we talk about how these Banjaras carried grains on these bullocks. And along with that, we also get to know that these Banjaras transported food grains for the Mughal army. So previously we learned about how during the rule of Sultan Alauddin Khalji under the Delhi Sultanate, the Banjaras were heavily relied upon. And even during the rule of the Mughal emperors, the Banjaras were relied upon to transport food grains for the Mughal army. And this was done mostly during the times of military campaigns. And at one point of time, you'll be surprised to know that 1 lakh bullocks were used to transport grains for the Mughal army. So these Banjaras constituted a very important nomadic community, and all these explanations corroborate the same idea. Before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question quickly. Which ruler mentioned the Banjaras in his memoirs? Was it Akbar, Jahangir, Babur or Shah Jahan? Well, the correct answer is Jahangir. It was the Mughal Emperor Jahangir whose memoirs contained mentions of the Banjaras. A point that we have been discussing all this while is that animals constituted a very important part of the lives of the pastoral communities. And here we also get to know about many pastoral tribes. They used to rear and sell animals such as cattle and horses to the prosperous people. Now this was done in order to earn a livelihood. So these people used to sell the cattle and the horses that they used to rear, and these were sold to prosperous people. All this while we have been talking about the pastoral nomads, but they were not the only community of people who lived around this time. Because around this time, different castes of petty peddlers also lived, and these petty peddlers also lived nomadic lives. That is to say, they used to move from one region to another in order to sell wares like ropes, reed, sacks and the likes. So these were some of the things that were sold by the petty peddlers who used to move from villages to villages. In this regard, mention must also be made of the various castes of entertainers, and these entertainers used to perform in different towns and villages, and this was also done in order to earn for themselves their livelihood. This series of lessons introduced us to a very important point about the caste politics. In these lessons, we got to know about the tribes that did not want to be suppressed and dominated by Brahminical dominance, which is why they wanted to live isolated lives in forested regions or in hilly and mountainous areas. So these were people who did not want to be incorporated into the mainstream societies. And the reason why they did not want to do so was that they did not believe in the rituals and the practices that were prescribed by the Brahmanas. So in this way, they found the Hindu religion very orthodox and dominant. Now many of these people from Punjab, Sindh and northwest frontier now adopted Islam. Why do you think they adopted Islam? Because they thought that Islam was more liberal and accommodating than Hinduism. Hinduism was the religion that oppressed and dominated them, and Hinduism was the religion that subsumed their autonomy, which is why they now adopted Islam as their religion. Now this is a very important and new point to us. In this regard, let us now talk about two religions that came into being as a direct expression of protest and rebellion against Hindu dominance and orthodoxy. Can you name the religions that we are referring to? The religions that we are referring to are Jainism and Buddhism. But before we talk about Jainism and Buddhism, there is a very important thing that we should definitely keep in mind. While we are talking about the resistance that was put up by the tribals against their incorporation into the mainstream societies, we should keep in mind that Jainism and Buddhism as expressions of protest emerged many centuries ago. In fact, Jainism came into being between the 7th and the 5th centuries BCE and Buddhism between the 6th and the 4th centuries BCE. But the point that we are trying to discuss here is that these religions were defined, or these religions came into being as protest against Hindu orthodoxy. Now, who founded these religions? Jainism was founded by Vardhaman Mahavira and Buddhism was founded by Gautama Buddha. Now these are religions that exist independently in today's India, and these religions have been able to separate themselves from the mainstream Hindu caste politics. So this is a not so important but interesting point that we came to know in this lesson. With this, we come to an end of our discussion on tribes, nomads and settled communities. Now this has been a long series of lessons where we traced how these tribes initially lived on the fringes of the society. They lived outside the society because they wanted to retain their independence. But many of those tribes with time were incorporated into the mainstream societies. And after these tribes were incorporated into the mainstream societies, some of those have continued to retain their own tradition, while many have been subsumed by the mainstream society as a whole. In these lessons, we also focused on two tribes to be very specific, the Ahums and the Gonds, that emerged as kingdoms. Now from this, we have also touched upon the lives of these tribals. We have discussed how the lives of these nomadic people were. They used to move from places to places, and while they moved from places to places, animals were very important to them because these animals were used to transport goods. These animals also provided them with products and items that they could exchange for meeting their other necessities. Now these are some of the points that we have been discussing in this lesson. And finally, we came to understanding that these tribes, while they existed at one point of time in different parts of the Indian subcontinent, all of them did not die and diminish over time, because many of these tribes continue to exist in different parts of the country, and as we mentioned, these tribes have also been enlisted in the Constitution of India. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers, or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million-plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.